Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for a new season of my Have Your Say series and this is for season 17 episode 1. So today I'm going to be talking about the first episode of season 17 and recapping what happened, going through the results of the Have Your Say poll where you at home get to vote on whether you agree with the outcome of the episode. And we'll be talking about something that happened very recently to do with Candy Muse calling out Tyra Sanchez over some comments that Tyra made about the Vivienne's sad passing. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. Okay, so let's start by recapping this week's episode. So we start off with quite an unusual start to the episode, and the queens are competing in something called the Squirrel Games, which is obviously a take on the Squid Games, which is the Netflix show. I haven't actually watched Squid Games, but I know what it is and I know what the concept is. I thought this was actually kind of funny, and I quite liked that they brought on not only the season 17 queens, and obviously they were the last ones standing, but I also liked that they brought back quite a lot of previous queens, people like Trinity the Tuck. I think they also had some interesting references. For example, they had the clown that you may remember that stood in for Bianca Del Rio in one of the previous seasons when they brought back all of the winners. And I thought that was just quite a nice reference that a lot of people, I'm sure, probably would know if you're a big fan of Drag Race like we all are. But overall, I don't know whether the Squid Games or Squirrel Games is going to be something that will be a long-standing thing this season, but it was interesting and I thought it was a cool way to switch things up, and it was quite interesting to do this, I assume, before they filmed the entrances because the queens kept mentioning it, so I assume this was genuinely filmed before the entrances. Okay, so let's go through the actual contestants and their entrances in order in which they came into the workroom. So first up we had Lexi Love from Louisville, Kentucky. Then we had Joella from Los Angeles, California. Then we had Corey King from Boston, Massachusetts. Then we had Lydia B. Collins from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Then we had Arietti from Seattle, Washington. Next was Jules Sparkles from Tampa, Florida. Then we had Lana Duray from New York. Next up was Sam Starr from Leeds, Alabama. Then we had Anya Nerve from Cleveland, Ohio. Then we had Susie Toot from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. After that we had Hormona Lisa from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Then we had Crystal Envy from Asbury Park, New Jersey. Then we had Acacia Forgot from Los Angeles, California. And then finally we had Lucky Stars from Miami, Florida. Overall, I really liked this cast and I think they all seem really high quality in terms of their outfits and very polished, which is something that's going to be very interesting to see how that develops throughout the season. But all of them came in, I thought all of them looked incredible. They all looked just so polished when we think back to maybe some of the earlier seasons. I think you can see the show and the standard really has just completely been ramping up every single season. And I think a lot of the queens just feel so much more polished than they ever were. But I also thought there was a really interesting collection of queens. We had some very conceptual queens, some kind of comedy queens, some more pageant queens. So it seemed like a very interesting mix. One thing that is quite interesting, and I saw quite a few people posting about this, and I also did share something about this on social media, but there is a lot of drag families from previous contestants on this season, which they did mention in the episode. So just to go through some of them. So Arietti is the drag child of Irene Dubois, or Irene the Alien, who was on season 15. Crystal Envy is the drag sister of Jasmine Kennedy. She is not related to Scarlett Envy because Scarlett actually clarified that on social media. Jules Sparkles is the drag granddaughter of Trinity the Tuck. Corey King is the drag sister of Plain Jane. Lana Duray is the drag daughter of Lux Noir London. And Sam Starr is the drag daughter of Trinity the Tuck. Also, it was spoken about online that Lucky Stars, I think, used to be the drag daughter of Nina Bonina Brown from season 9. However, Nina has spoken recently in one of her videos, basically saying that she and Lucky don't really talk anymore. So I think perhaps they used to be in the same drag family, but they're just not really on speaking terms from what I can see. But there is some kind of connection, and I think you can sort of see that in the drag styles, that they're both very conceptual, creative queens. Okay, so RuPaul then comes in and announces that, a bit like we've had in previous seasons, they're doing a split premiere even though all of the queens are here. And the first challenge is a talent show. But the twist is that although they've brought back the Rater Queen from last season, what's going to happen is that half the cast, or in other words 7 of the queens, have to do their talent show this week, but then the other group, the other 7 of them, get to do the Rater Queen, and then next week it will reverse and the other group will get to do it. And again, I thought this was actually a really interesting twist. I like that Drag Race is constantly trying to switch things up, make sure that it doesn't get stale, throw in a few curveballs, and I thought it was quite an interesting way to switch up the format without making it too confusing or deviating too far from the standard format of the show. And the queens then have to kind of discuss and figure out which week they want to perform in, because some queens don't want to perform in week 1 because they want to kind of scope out the competition. And we'll discuss that a little bit later on when we talk about the Have Your Say poll results. But eventually the queens do decide, and then they get ready for the runway, and all of the queens will be doing a runway, but only the 7 of them will be doing the talent show this week. We also found out that there was a mini challenge, even though it wasn't actually announced, and it was who had the best photo during the Squirrel Games bit at the beginning of the episode, and Lana Del Rey won that as the mini challenge. Okay, so before we get into the talent show, I'm going to do the runway because that came first in the episode. And as I said, all of the queens are doing this runway, and the category was Masked for Masked Singer. And as usual, I'm not going to give my opinion on the fashion because it's just not my thing, but I'm going to go through each queen giving a brief description of what they wore, and I'll be doing it in order in which they appeared. Okay, so first was Acacia Forgot, and she said she's serving them snowman who's melting in this current climate, going from snow to ho. Then we had Joella. She said her mask is a woman in the moon, and she's a Scorpio, and she's very in tune with astrology, and she's giving the star and the moon. Then we had Jules Sparkles. She said the inspiration for this look is if Ariana Grande was invited to a masquerade ball in the 60s. Next we had Ariete. She said this is the tribal elven goddess look, and her disciples have poisoned her and now she's bleeding on her couture. Then we had Lydia B. Collins. She said that she is an alien woman sentenced to the intergalactic Iron Maiden for crimes against her planet. Then we had Lucky Stars. She said she's got a pizza box on her head, and then she reveals you can see a yummy delicious pizza face. Then we had Susie Toot. She said she's serving Eleanor Powell and Marlena Dietrich, and she's been obsessed with the girls in these pre-code movie musicals. Then we had Corey King. She said she's hobbling down the runway in this tight, evil raven dress, and this is something different for her. Then we had Hormona Lisa. She said that skunks, in her opinion, are the glamorous ones of the rodent family, just don't smell too hard because you might pass out. Then we had Crystal Envy. She said she's giving you porcelain baby doll realness, and she's perfected poise polished on the outside, and then it's the face crack that represents how underneath you can crack under pressure. Then we had Lexi Love. She said this is the MTV Moon person, and it fits into her drag because it's not only a pop culture reference, but it's also fashion. Then we had Lana Del Rey. She said this look is based on her baby cat Gouda, because every day with Gouda is a Gouda day. Then we had Anya Nerve. She said this gown and mask is inspired by a body of artwork that she produced made with materials that you typically find in the beauty supply store. And finally we had Sam Starr. She said she's giving you Storm Cloud Mask Honey the Darkness, living in the closet, and then bam, it's revealed. Overall, I think my favourite look was potentially Lucky Stars. I just think that it was so conceptual but really well done. And it was just quite quirky, something that we haven't necessarily seen, but also just looked really polished in fashion. I also, for the same reason, really liked Susie Toots because I thought it was really well made, but it was also just a really cool outfit and it really perfectly fits her style, and the makeup was also quite interesting. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the Queen's talent show numbers, and I'm going to go through them and give my opinion on them, and I'll do it in the order in which they appeared. So first up we had Jules Sparkles, who did an original song. I really enjoyed this performance. Actually, out of all of the original songs, and I do think there were a lot of original songs, which has been something that I find personally a little bit monotonous, but I actually thought she did a really good job. I thought the La Leche song was just really catchy. It definitely also showcased not only the fact that it was a good song, but she's a really good dancer. She definitely was giving me almost kind of Gorgeous vibes, the way that she really connects with the audience. She can move really well. And I just really thought it was a good song. So of all the original songs, this was one of my favorite because it just seemed so polished and I just couldn't get the song out of my head afterwards. Then we had Ariete, who did a dance number. I really loved that she was talking about her Latina heritage, and that was very much represented in the dance, the outfit and everything. As some of the contestants sort of alluded to though, I did think that it looked beautiful the way she moved the dress and everything, but it did just get a little bit one note after a while, and I was maybe expecting a little bit more from it, and it just didn't really seem to go anywhere. So unfortunately, this wasn't my favorite. I just think that it could have been elevated slightly, and maybe there could have been a reveal or something else to it. Then we had Lydia B. Collins, who did a sort of burlesque comedy number. I really liked the concept for this, and as some of the queens said, when she first came out, I thought this was going to be so funny because I thought the puppet was a really good idea. It just looked so funny and quirky. The song was good, or the kind of the talking bit was very good. I think it started off really strong, but it did kind of, unfortunately for me, fizzle out partway through, and I don't think it quite had enough gags to really carry it through. So I think it was a good concept, it just needed fleshing out a little bit more. Then we had Lucky Stars, who also did an original song / I guess variety number. I really loved this song. What actually stood out to me the most was that she had a lemonade cart, and I guess she didn't bring this with her in her bag, so I'm assuming the show must have provided this. But I just thought it was just such a big budget type of thing. Out of all of the queens, Lucky had, I would say, the biggest prop piece perhaps. So I'd be curious to know quite how that worked, because I assume she didn't bring that with her. But anyway, moving on to the actual talent number itself, I really liked it. It was very funny. It was something unexpected. I really then liked when she started squeezing the lemon juice out of her breast areas. That was just something really funny. The outfit was also amazing. And it was just kind of stupid, funny, but also worked, I think, with her personality and her aesthetic. So for me, this was actually a really strong performance because it was something just quite unusual and a bit different. Then we had Joella, who did an original song. I thought this was okay. I think she performed it well, and I could see maybe she was nervous in front of Katy Perry because she had said that she's a massive super fan. The song itself was fine, but I do think it didn't really go anywhere. It needed maybe something else to really take it to the next level. It did just kind of fall a little bit flat compared to some of the other original songs because there wasn't necessarily a big reveal or a big stunt. So unfortunately, it just kind of got lost for me a little bit. Then we had Acacia Forgot, who did live singing. I always appreciate when queens do something like live singing because at least it's a bit different to doing a pre-recorded original song, which is what a lot of the queens do. And it does take a lot of effort and also talent to be able to sing and play an instrument. I couldn't do either of those things, and she was doing both of them. So I would just like to give her credit for that because it's really impressive. However, unfortunately, I don't think it quite worked for her. I don't think it sounded necessarily the best. I think the song itself, maybe it should have maybe had a bit more of a zing to it or something funny because it was just a little bit forgettable. But I really do appreciate that she didn't do just another original pre-recorded song, and I think she should have maybe been given credit for doing that. But this wasn't my favourite. And then finally we have Susie Toot, who did an original song but also tap dancing as well. I really loved this because it incorporated two different things. It wasn't just an original song, it also was the tap dancing, which is an incredible actual real talent that you have to have that not everyone can do. And I thought this worked really well with her personality. It was very fun. She was very charming, very energetic. And I do think having that little gag about having the Morse code tapped out in tap dance was really funny. But also the tap dancing itself was genuinely really impressive. So for me, this was one of the standouts. Okay, so the judges don't actually give critiques on the main stage because they're doing the Rate a Queen, and it's the other 7 queens who didn't perform who get to do Rate a Queen this week, and then next week it will switch. So we did see part of the Rate a Queen, and we saw mainly who was voted number 1 and number 2 and then number 7, i.e. last. So we kind of had an idea of who was going to be tops and bottoms, but they didn't show every single thing. But later on the main stage, we find out that Acacia Forgot was voted number 7, or in other words, last place, which means that next week, the person who is also in 7th place will be in the bottom with Acacia, and they will then lip sync to decide who is going home. So there was no elimination this week, which we knew from the start. But the top 2 are announced as Jules Sparkles and Susie Toot, and they lip-sync to the song Woman's World by Katy Perry because Katy Perry was the guest judge this week. And Susie Toot is announced as the winner of the lip-sync, which means that she wins this week's challenge. Okay, so let's move on to the results of the Have Your Say poll, where you get to vote on if you agree with the outcome of the episode. So question 1 was, who had the best entrance look? So first was Lucky Stars with 37.1%. Then we had Lexi Love with 18%, and then we had Arietti with 13.5%. And I do agree with this. I think Lucky is definitely going to be a very conceptual, creative queen. It was just so out of the box, so interesting to look at. It definitely did kind of give me Nina Bonina Brown vibes because she's also extremely creative and talented. And I could see that they use a lot of paper and cardboard and things like that to really give a lot of 3D textural elements. So I really loved Lucky's outfit. I thought it was incredible and very eye-catching. Question 2 was, would you want to do the talent show in week 1 or week 2? And this was quite split. Week 1 got 54.7% and week 2 got 45.3%. So although it was quite split, week 1 did win. I guess you could look at it both ways. If you go first, you can kind of get it out of the way, which is maybe what I would do, because I think you can scope out the competition if you wait till week 2, but ultimately I'm not sure it necessarily is going to benefit you that much. I think the only benefit would be is if you know who you're competing against, and I think this did happen because I think it was Sam Starr is also doing a country type performance and didn't want to be in the same group as Acacia because she was also doing a country performance. So I could see why that might be a way you'd look at it, because if you're doing something similar to someone else, it's probably better not to be in a group with them. But ultimately, I don't think it probably matters that much which week you're in. Question 3 was, who had the best runway look? And we had Jules Sparkles with 36.1%, Arietti with 23.9%, and then Lexi Love with 11.1%. I did love Jules's outfit and it was very well made. The colour was beautiful and it was just a stunning look. However, the reason when I talked about the runway, I said I would have given it to someone like, I think, Lucky, just because it was something so unusual and it was just a little bit different. Okay, question 4 was Rate a Queen, rank the Queen's talent show numbers, 1 being the best, 7 being the worst. So I'll show you all 7 of the results on screen. So these graphs obviously show you for each queen which position between 1 and 7 they got the most votes in. So you can see here that Susie Toot got the most number 1 votes, meaning that most people thought that in the Rate a Queen, Susie Toot would have been number 1. Then we had Lucky Stars, who was probably almost joint between 1 and 2, but got less votes for number 1 than Susie did, so Lucky would have been number 2. And then for number 3, we would have had Lydia and Jules kind of got a lot of votes in that kind of category, in that area of being number 3, which is sort of in the middle. And then you can see that queens such as Arietti got a decent amount of votes for number 4 and 5. So did Acacia. And then Joella got the most votes for position number 7. So it would have been Joella being last in this particular vote rather than Acacia, who also did get a decent amount of votes more on the kind of 5, 6, 7 side of it. But Joella did get the most in number 7. And I guess I would have to agree, although I don't think Acacia or Joella did a particularly good job, I think they were probably the bottom 2 for me. I do think that Acacia, at least her talent, because she did live singing and guitar playing, I think it was maybe slightly more impressive than what Joella did. I do like Joella, she seems really fun, but I don't think this was quite the best performance. So I think I would have to agree that Joella probably was last for me. And I agree that Susie 2 would have been number 1 perhaps, but I actually think Lucky Star maybe was my favourite out of all of them, just because it was so creative and weird. But I guess it kind of comes down to what surprises you the most or what sticks out in your mind the most. And I did think that Susie's with the tap dancing is something we haven't really seen before, so I can see why she's number 1. I guess I probably would also have put her number 1. But it would have been quite close for me with Lucky Stars. Question 5 was who won the lip sync in your opinion? And we had 61.2% for Susie Toot and 38.8% for Jules Sparkles. And I do agree, I think Susie maybe captured a slightly different element of the song and was kind of going more down the comedy route and was doing the tap dancing again, whereas Jules was doing an incredible job, amazing dancer, but I do think that maybe Susie was just capturing the attention a little bit more. And we will talk about the lip sync song choice because that's been something that's talked about a lot to do with Woman's World by Katy Perry. I'll talk about that in a minute when we get to the comments. And then finally, question 6 was, who is the frontrunner of the season based on what we've seen so far, or in other words, most likely to win or make it far in the competition? And we had Jules Sparkles with 24.9%, then Susie Toot with 23.8%, and then Lexi Love with 19.7%. And I think this does make sense because Jules and Susie were the top 2, so it makes sense that they got the top 2 amount of votes in this. I can also see why Lexi Love got a lot of votes because she was really fun, she was giving really good confessionals, her drag was good, her performance we haven't seen yet, but she was really fun. So I can see why people are really resonating with her. So I think it'll be really interesting to see next week's because then we'll have a more full picture of all of the Queen's performances and where they then will kind of fall into place and where they will be in the competition. Okay, so moving on to the comments for this week and starting with my Patreon members. By the way, if you are interested in becoming a Patreon member, one of the benefits is that you get your comment featured in my Have Your Say videos. So I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested in that, plus a load of other benefits you get from being a Patreon member. But the first comment comes from my Patreon member, Gardy, who said, I'm in love with Lucky Stars and Lexi Love and crushing on Anya Nerve and Lana Duray. I definitely agree. I think Lucky Star seems really fun, really out of the box, really interesting, really creative. Lexi also just seems like a really good time girl, really fun. I really enjoyed watching her. And in terms of the crushing on Anya Nerve and Lana Duray, in general, there are a lot of very attractive queens on this season, both in and out of drag. And I think there has been quite a lot of these kind of thirst trap type comments and posts on social media because it is a very good looking season. It's also a very young season. If you look at the ages of the queens, the oldest queen I believe is maybe 34, which makes me feel kind of old because that's how old I am. So it was just very interesting. It is a very, very young season, but also a very good looking season. And then one of my other Patreon members called Yael, or who also has the username Isabelita, said, I enjoyed this episode. I loved seeing what looks and talents the girls brought. The level of Drag Race is so high now, there is hardly any room for missteps. I agree with Acacia's bottom. Her performance was a little flat, but I thought Lucky Stars should have been on top. I do agree. I think this season has really elevated and we've seen, I think the standard is just so high. No one did badly really at all. I think even the queens in the bottom still did a good performance. And I think all of the looks were incredible. I don't think there was a bad look. And I think it does show that now Drag Race has just become such a huge powerhouse of talent, but also the queens just put so much money into it now that no one really looks bad anymore. It's just more splitting hairs at this point. I don't necessarily agree with Acacia's bottom. I do think, as I said earlier, it probably should have been Joella, but I can see why I think Acacia would have been maybe the second bottom. And I do agree, Lucky probably would, in my opinion, would have also been in the top 2. I'm not sure who I would have kicked out of the top 2, but I do think Lucky should have been in the top 2. Okay, so moving on to the comments from my Have Your Say poll, and it was quite a mixed bag, I will say, this week in terms of the comments. There were some comments that were more on the negative side. So someone said, overall, I feel like the first half of the talent show was good, but nothing mind-blowing, waiting for someone to have an Anitra moment. And on a similar note, someone else said, really wish we could see talents that weren't just lip-syncing. We see that as a talent during the season. I just want to see some different talents, even the bizarre ones. And I do kind of agree. I've said this before. I think original songs, although it is something easy and kind of catchy to do, I do think it's been done to death a little bit, unfortunately. So I do think you have to really think outside the box to make it interesting. And perhaps I do agree that this particular talent show, there wasn't necessarily the moment like Anitra's one that really stands out. There were some good ones, but maybe not necessarily mind-blowing like we've had in previous seasons. And then someone else made an interesting point and said, I haven't seen anyone discussing it, but you can see Plain Jane's influence on this talent show this year. La Leche and the lemonade bit felt very inspired by Burger Finger. And I do kind of agree. As we remember from last season, Plain Jane did the kind of funny song Burger Finger, which was not only a song, but it was kind of funny and stupid, and RuPaul loved it. And you can kind of see that since then, a lot of queens have done things quite similar to that, more on the kind of stupid side, because RuPaul loves that sort of thing. Because perhaps Plain Jane has kind of set a trend that the queens are doing, but it'll be interesting to see how that develops. There were also a lot of comments from people saying that Lucky should have been in the top with perhaps Susie, and someone else said, prediction, Lucky Stars will be the runway girl of the season, which so far I would agree with because Lucky's runways have been incredible. And then there were also some positive comments of people saying, I think the cast is really fun and has good energy, the talents were overall good, and the new stage is awesome. This is something I actually wanted to bring up. So the stage is actually quite different in a way. It doesn't necessarily look that different on first glance, but the colours are quite different. But I think the biggest thing is the shape of the stage. Now the entire stage is kind of filled in. There's no gap or any drop. Before, there was the narrow bit where the queens walk down, and then the kind of, it almost looks like a letter T shape with the top bit. But now the entire stage is filled in. And I think if you compare it to season 1 of Drag Race, you can see that the stage has got progressively bigger and bigger. But now that the entire stage is filled in, I think it does look quite different, and it also gives the queens probably a bit more space than it did before. And then a few people did comment about Woman's World, the song, which was the lip sync song, saying that it is a horrendous lip sync song. So just to kind of fill you in to talk about in case people don't know, so Woman's World is obviously a song by Katy Perry. When the song came out a while ago, a lot of people were giving it criticism because they said it sounded like it was written by AI, or that it was just really disingenuous and trying to be feminist but in a really bad way. Also, one of the other things is that Katy Perry worked with Dr. Luke as part of the song production, and Dr. Luke is someone who's been accused of quite a few different bad things by people like Kesha, and there's a current lawsuit around that. So Katy Perry also got a lot of criticism for working with Dr. Luke because of that. What I think is interesting is that Woman's World came out relatively recently, and at the time when they recorded this episode, the song I don't believe was actually out yet. So the queens would have actually performed this not knowing or not having ever heard this song out in the real world before. So they almost got a bit of a preview. And I'm assuming that Katy Perry was probably doing this as part of the promotion for the new song, and Drag Race probably also thought that. But then because the song has got so much criticism since it came out, I can see why people were kind of in the lead up to this episode. People were joking about the fact that it was clearly going to be Woman's World as the lip sync, and it was really disappointing. But that's obviously not the Queen's fault, and I think as a lip sync song, it was fine. It wasn't my favourite, and I think the Queens did what they could with it and had a bit of fun. But I do think that it was unfortunate that it kind of clouded the first episode a little bit because of the controversy of this song and Katy Perry in general. I also had another little bit of an interesting tea that was sent to me by one of my followers called Tyra on Instagram, who said, "Hi Matt, love your channel so much, thank you." And they said, "I wanted to bring you some drama from last week at L's on 7th, where Sam Star is home to. At the premiere viewing party last night, a guest told Sam they loved Jules' powder blue look on the runway, and she said, fun fact, a lot of us girls this season used the same designers, so one of the designers who made this look for her accidentally mailed the mask to my residence, as in mailed it to the wrong person, and me being the good sister that I am, brought it to set, and then when I arrived, I ended up giving it to her. So it was really interesting to hear that apparently Sam got delivered the mask, which was actually for Jules, and it was by accident, and then brought it to set so that Jules could use it. Obviously, I was not there at this viewing party, so I'm having to just trust what Tyreek said. So just to let you know, this isn't verified by me, but I just thought it was something interesting that one of my followers sent me. Okay, so now moving on, and it starts with the very sad news that I have posted about on my channel recently, which is to do with the very sad and tragic passing of the Vivienne, who was the winner of Drag Race UK Season 1, and she was also on All Stars 7. It was announced that she had passed away, and no details have been given yet, but I just wanted to say I loved the Vivienne. She was so beloved, really talented. She was one of my favourites from Drag Race UK, one of my favourite winners ever, and it was incredibly sad to hear that she had died. So I would just like to say that our thoughts should go out to the Vivienne's family, loved ones, friends, and anyone else. And as you can imagine, this obviously was a big talking point on social media, with lots and lots of queens sharing really touching and lovely tributes to the Vivienne. And I'll put some of them on screen because they were really lovely. And people were also sharing some of their favourite moments that the Vivienne did, because she was just so incredibly funny and groundbreaking as a queen. However, something that happened to do with the Vivienne's passing came from Tyra Sanchez, who is the winner of Season 2 of Drag Race. So as some of you may know, I have talked about this in previous videos, but Tyra has become a slightly controversial figure within Drag Race. I've talked about this in multiple videos, but there's been some things that she said over the years. She was kicked out of DragCon apparently one year because she threatened to bomb the place. She's also had several online incidents with other queens and threats and things like that. And for a while, Tyra said that she didn't want to be associated in any way with Drag Race. And although she has continued that, she did quit drag, but it now seems to have come back to drag with the name Tyra rather than Tyra Sanchez. However, something that happened was shortly after the Vivienne's death was announced on social media, Tyra retweeted a tweet from the Vivienne from 2020, where the Vivienne said, "Bet Tyra was fuming when she realised Netflix spoiled the win too. Sorry gal, you tried though." And I'm not 100% certain, but I believe this tweet from the Vivienne, which like I said was from 2020, so 4 or 5 years ago at this point, I believe it was a reference to the fact that back when All Stars 5 was airing, before the winner was announced, which was obviously Shea Coulee, I believe Tyra tried to spoil that Shea was the winner before it was announced by posting it in a video or in a thumbnail somewhere. And I think that the Vivienne in this tweet from 2020 was kind of making fun of that. However, for some reason, Tyra has retweeted this very recently after the Vivienne's death was announced, and Tyra retweeted this tweet from 2020 and said, "Yet it doesn't compare to the fumes of the crematorium." This tweet, as you can imagine, received a huge amount of backlash from not only queens, but just everyone on the internet, and was a huge talking point. And a lot of people were saying how disgusting and distasteful it was, given that the Vivienne has passed. And one of the people who commented on this was Candy Muse, who said, "I've defended you for years, but now you can absolutely go F yourself, and if our path were to ever cross, it's absolutely on sight, B. It's not a threat, it's a promise, you disgusting person." And Tyra responded to that and said, "Threat received, prepare your funeral." And also quite a few other queens condemned what Tyra had said, such as Hormona Lisa, who said, "What a disgusting thing to say." Joey J said F you completely with the trash emoji, and Deja Sky said you really are a rotted person. There were also a lot of other queens and just comments in general saying how disgusting it was that Tyra had said this about the Vivienne's passing. After Candy Muse and lots of other queens had condemned what Tyra said and criticised her very heavily, Tyra then posted a screenshot saying that Candy Muse had blocked her, and Tyra said, "B, don't spit out threats and then run scared. You stated on site, run me mine." Tyra then posted quite a few other comments on social media about this and said, "She's dead, rotting. Send me all the hate in the world, won't bring her back. But do as you must. Because of you, the tweet has reached over 25,000 individuals. Thanks for the much needed attention that I oh so desperately needed. She also said, you all are like sheep, doing as I desire, silly rabbits. Okay losers, I gotta go breathe now. Let's remember not to take our breath for granted. You may never know when it will be your last. God bless you all, and much love to everyone sending hate today. Release, repressed, suppressed, regressed. Redirect all that anger to me. Give it to me. I'm built for this. I can take it. You can do it. A lot of other people then started saying that Raven should have won season 2, which is a narrative that has been talked about a lot since Tyra started being controversial for quite a long time. And I assume Tyra was talking about this in one of her follow-up tweets that said, calling for a crown/title that I could give 2 Fs about is stupid. You're the only ones caught up in that fairy tale. It means absolutely nothing. Y'all been hollering 15 minutes for 15 years. F that crown. F RuPaul. F RuPaul's Drag Race. F World of Wonder. And F you too. Tyra also said, they troll, hanging around with bated breath waiting for the next tweet. They reply instantly with their hate garnering more attention while increasing the reach of each previous tweet. Yet I'm delusional. You can't help yourselves, I get it, silly rabbits. And then she also said, point proven. And as I said earlier, a lot of queens and other people on social media have condemned what Tyra has been saying. And a lot of people were commenting saying that because Tyra has a blue tick and is subscribed to the Twitter Premium, they actually earn money as per the amount of engagements they get on their post, which is often why these channels do these sorts of things, because it earns them money. And for example, Megami from season 16 said, commenting, reposting, quote tweeting, etc. all serves to give nasty people free engagement, which is all they want at the end of the day. Just block. Some of y'all are so quick to post a comeback comment, you don't realise you just fell for the bait. Block, 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 don't engage. And since then, I don't think Tyra has said anything else, so we'll have to see if anything else happens to do with this situation, or if Tyra says anything else about this situation. But as I say in all my videos, please do not go and send hate to anybody regardless of whether they deserve it or not, just because it's not the right thing to do. Please just watch these videos for information and entertainment purposes. Just watch this video and consume it passively. But once again, I would just like to say how sad I am about the Vivienne's passing. And please in the comments write your favourite thing about the Vivienne, perhaps a favourite moment or something you really enjoyed about her, and we can all celebrate her life and amazing career in the comment section. So there you go, there was the Have Your Say for Season 17, Episode 1. Let me know in the comments if you liked the premiere and how excited you are for the rest of the season. If you'd like to get exclusive benefits such as early access to my videos and having your comment featured in my Have Your Say videos, as well as many other benefits, please consider signing up to my Patreon. It just costs a few dollars a month, it really supports my channel and is such a huge lifeline to me and my channel, so please consider, and I'll put a link in the description. And I would just like to say thank you so much to my Patreon members. Your support is truly incredible. I am so humbled and so appreciative of all of your support. I really love seeing you have your say comments. I really love this community that I've built on Patreon. So thank you all so much for supporting me. It really does mean more than you know. If you liked this video, please make sure you like and comment on the video because it really helps boost the algorithm and tell YouTube to promote this to other people. And please make sure you subscribe because it really makes a huge difference to my channel. So hit that subscribe button now. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you'll join me again for some future videos. Thank you, bye!